Hello everyone and welcome back to Inside Artscroll, where the books you read and the people who write them come to life. Today I am joined by Rabbi Yecheskel Elias, the author of a fantastic new book on Ani Mammon, on all the Ani Mammons. Thank you, Rabbi Elias, for joining us.
Pleasure to be here.
Now this is really a groundbreaking work, at least in my eyes, because Ani Mammon is such a fundamental part of Yiddishkeit, the Yud Gimel Ikrim, Ani Mammon. I mean, it's Ani Mammon. And yet, from what I've seen, there isn't really any comprehensive work on the Yud Gimel Ikrim until now. You've put out this new book, which Mir Hashem is going to be bought and used in Yiddish homes across the globe. Tell us how you came to get involved in this project.
I certainly hope so. Thank you for the bracha for Hatzlacha. I hope it finds a welcome audience in Klal Yisrael. I would say, in fairness, there are other works out there. In my research in writing this, going back to the drawing board, we sat down to give shiurim on this. I'll talk about that shortly, Mir Hashem. But there are Sefarim out there, there are works out there. Lashon Kodesh is a tremendous amount. But it's important to differentiate the different types of works and different types of targeted audiences. You know, who are the mechabrim or the authors aiming for? I do think, and I do feel very strongly that, in the sense of what we're trying to target here, it's a novel approach in terms of today's day and age, what we need, and in that sense. But to say
which is actually what I was going for, is that in English, in an understandable translation with commentary, that type of work, I feel that your new work is very, very unique in that sense.
Thank you for that. Well, the goal here was, really, truth is that there, I would say, more or less, at the risk of oversimplification, the works up until this point that I'm familiar with are the ones widely available. I don't claim to know everything out there. Klal Yisrael has put out a tremendous amount of literature. There are Sefarim out there that people use the Ani Mammons as a springboard for all types of shmuzin and ideas and topics that they want to talk about, and it's really just a springboard to get into a bigger topic without really staying true to the mission of the Ani Mammons itself. Other Sefarim go to the other extreme, and they have the Ani Mammons where they're really focusing on the text and pretty much that alone, saying what the words are. Those are the two of the more recent things that have been put out. The literature has been out, again, in multiple languages. I would say that. Now, you go back well further back, times of the Rambam and Rishonim or others who've dealt with these inyanim. We have long-winded, very intense hashkafa matter. And to put all those things into their category, today's day and age, I think the really question before we started was, what would appeal to today's day and age? How can we make this something that appeals to Klal Yisrael today?
And what did you find? What was the key to make it appropriate for today's generation?
Okay, so I'll take one step back. The first thing I think which is important is that there's a tremendous bikush in Klal Yisrael today for so much in Yadus and so much in Torah. It's a tremendous bikush out there. There's a desire for more Torah, more information. People want. There's a thirst out there. Chazal tell us that there are many. I think Gemara says the 10 types of hungers that will come to the world. The different types of rav. The kasha b'kulam will be in the end of toward Mashiach. There'll be a time of loy rav l'lechem loy sam l'mayim kim l'shmayis divrei Hashem. There'll be a rav as well. There'll be a rav as well, and it'll be kasher mikulam, it'll be the hardest rav, but there'll be a real thirst for Torah, a real thirst for what we could, same way a person thirsts for food, water, people want Torah, and we see that today, people want that. And the question is really, without getting into details here, but the idea is, how are we as educators attacking that need? So when someone wants something, we can either sell them the same thing they've had for years previous, but every generation has their own tchuna, and they have their own understanding, how they see life. I mean, everything we do today is totally different. We don't live in the same world as 50 years ago.
What do you think the key is as far as today's language? Is it dumbing it down? Is it, I hate to say that, but...
Exactly that point. Meaning, if we have to go ahead and start selling ourselves cheap, if we take the material and we sell it cheap, we downgrade it and years ago I remember Rabbi Shimon also...
Because, by the way, before you go on, I would say here in the world of Artscroll, I would say it's punkfakert. It's about putting it in today's language, in today's vernacular, today's jargon, without bringing down the quality of the work.
So that's really exactly what we're targeting. What we're targeting exactly is the message is inviolable. There's nothing about it that can be changed. It's Torah's emes. It's exactly what's meant to be said. Now, the first question always has to be, what did, in this case, the Ani Mammons, which I can deal with that further, but the Yugrim Ikrim that we have are based, to the best of our knowledge, they're based upon the Rambam's Ikrim that he established in Hakdama to the Perek Chelik in Sanhedrin. And he elaborates there. We have a abridged version, which more or less lines up with the Rambam. And we're going back to that. So we have to ask ourselves, what did the Rambam want? Before we decide how to package the message and deliver it to people today, we have to be honest to what the message is. And that's really the first goal of this whole work.
Which is the first question people are going to ask. Most people assume that the Yud Gimel Ikrim were written by the Rambam. Is that accurate?
Okay, so
I know it's a loaded question.
It's an eye opener. It's an eye opener. And when I first saw this, especially when I got into these, so we'll go through the history of how we got here. But the idea of when I went through this more be'iyun and delving into this and seeing the history and what happened, it was an eye opener for me. And somehow, it's been quite a few years that every child grows up knowing the Gimel Ikrim. And as you look through it, you realize we have no idea who the author of the Ani Mamins in our siddur. We have absolutely not a clue who wrote these Ani Mamins. It's astounding because you have something that it could have been a fantastic, we assume it has to be somebody pretty chashuv to have that schus to catch on, to be inspiration for Klal Yisrael. And we're talking about Ani Mamins that aren't just, me and you, you and I and every other person out there saying it. The Chavetz Chaim said to say it every single day. Other Gedolim pushed for it. The Klal Yisrael did something accepted by Klal Yisrael and by the Gedolim of Klal Yisrael, the leaders of Klal Yisrael, not just the Hamaynam. So we have clear guidance that this is a correct thing to go. There were questions that come up, that have come up.
Yes or no? Was it written by the Rambam or was it not?
To the best of our knowledge, absolutely not.
Okay.
I can't say that affirmatively because we don't know who wrote it. But I could say that there are enough discrepancies between the Ani Mamin version that we have and the Rambam Pirush Mishnayos that would seem to indicate. Now there are those. I know there are people out there who would suggest the Rambam over the years may have had other versions, and maybe this is a takeoff of that. What we have, the facts that we have in front of us is we have an elaborate version of the Rambam himself that he wrote in Arabic, translated. We have a few translations, but more or less the same. Then we have the Ani Mamins in the Siddur version, so to speak. They line up more or less. There are very clear and subtle. There are very clear differences, disparities between the two. Those disparities lend us to believe that it's not the same author. It's based on that clearly, it seems to be. But the betting money would be that it's not the same mechaber.
And at what point in time did those Ani Mamins, whoever the author was, did it somehow get into the mainstream, so to speak, where it's in every single siddur?
So it's a mystery digging backwards, trying to figure out things spread and spread. But where was the first, even just the first source, dating the first source?
Right.
So we find Sefer, we look back. Listed in the introduction to this work, where there's a number of sources. There's some Sidurim, some Machzarim in the 1500s. We're talking about 300 years after the Rambam was nifter.
Right.
It means after the Rambam passed away, 300 years passed, and we have no record, no documentation. That could be because things were destroyed. It could be it was actually earlier. We don't know that. So it shows up 300 years later. We don't know the mechaber. That catches on to the degree that people sort of think that's the Rambam and they forget about the Rambam. Most people have very little knowledge, if any, of the Rambam's version, what the Rambam himself wrote. The job here really, it's always a dilemma here. Where do you stay true to? Do you aim for the Ani Mamin version? Do you aim for the Rambam version? Largely, again, they dovetail. They work together. They're along the same lines. I made a point of trying to speak out really capturing the best of both worlds. The goal here is the bottom line is the Rambam, but there are chapters, there are ideas that are expressed that are clearly, they're written very clearly that these are the ideas of the Baal Ani Mamin, whoever wrote this. These are ideas that we accept. We may not know who it is, but the fact that Klal Yisrael had it for centuries and Gedolim accepted it, that's good enough, that's credentials as far as Klal Yisrael is concerned, that gives us the mandate to go ahead and explore that angle too.
Now this work also has a unique emotional component that's very unlike other works which are also equally special, in that it's dedicated Lilu Nishmas Davi Steinmetz, son of Reb Shlomi Steinmetz and his Rebbetzin, and there's definitely something special about that. But how did you get involved together with Reb Shlomi? And I know that the Sefer is also based on shiurim you've been giving on Ani Mamin. Take us back to the history here, because it's only a year old. That Klal Yisrael experienced such a gut-wrenching tzara, and what's come out of it is just a revolution of chizuk, and now Reb Shlomi and his whole effort to spread the saying of Ani Mamin. Talk about that.
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a way of guiding people and taking people to where they have to be. I've been involved in very many different situations in Montreal in the chinuch aspect, chinuch in terms of Bachrim, elementary, high school, post-high school, balbatim, people who are up in their years. It could be Ian, it could be all sorts of different types of things that are going on. And sometimes one window closes, the next window of opportunity opens, and sometimes you end up somewhere you don't know where and what, based on you go a couple of years doing something, and then that closes, and you say, what happens now? Right? And sometimes that's the impetus to get you to the next step. Based on a confluence of various factors, I end up spending more time. There are a number of different shuls right around my neighborhood. It's a pretty close-knit neighborhood, our neighborhood of Montreal. I live right around the corner from the Steinmetzes. And I ended up spending more time within Sefer Reishis Chachma, which is where Reb Shlomi davens. His father-in-law as well davens there for close to already 50 years. They're very
Now,
much
your father's the Rosh Kollel in
of the Kollel,
of the
which
Montreal
was
Kollel.
Montreal Kollel, which is on the same block.
Right.
It's on the same block. It's right there. I live right across the street, so it's all within the same Dalet Amos, literally. And I ended up, the Mesivta is more of a Haimisha place, more of a Hungarian flavor to it. It's a different type of crowd. Very warm crowd, very nice crowd. And interestingly, I hadn't even been there that much. It's across the street from my house. Occasionally, to daven Shachris. It just, I hadn't been there that much. And then due to different factors, I ended up gravitating more towards that shul and opportunities that were there. And then came Lag Baimer. And again, whether you daven there, whether you didn't, Montreal, even the broader community of Montreal, there's a big, large Hasidic community, a large Sephardi community. Montreal, we all know each other. It's big, there are large numbers there, and we all know each other. And it's everyone's tzara. It's something we all felt. And I remember that night, the night of Lag Baimer, and we heard news of the tragedy, and no one knew exactly what happened first, and then things were developing, and this happened, that happened. And then suddenly we heard there are people from Montreal, there are people we know who are part of this tzara. But no one knew yet what happened, and are they alive, are they not alive? There were others from Montreal besides Yerushalayim, again, not necessarily in Montreal at the time, but people who had their roots in Montreal. And the whole night, people were saying Tehillim, and people were just in that pensive state, not knowing what's going to happen. And again, there's a personal, became like a family. You hear in the news today, we become sort of, desensitized to what I think going on there in the world. We hear this, we hear that, and it's, today the flood of media just sort of desensitizes us. But when it hits home, it hits home. And this is the Artscroll. And we heard the whole night, they were waiting, and then we came to Shachris, and we all, different people heard earlier, later, but we all heard the news, and it was a tzara for Montreal in particular.
Sure.
It hit us very hard. Many people around the globe, everyone had a personal connection to someone there, but it's something very personal. So at that time, during the Shiva, sitting there with Yerushalmi, and it became such a passion for Yerushalmi that he's going to take this. He spoke by the Levaya, whoever saw the Levaya, it was heart-wrenching to see, but it was passionate to see. I got phone calls from people afterwards who said to me, Yerushalmi, he's not from the Tzadiki Hadar, the Gedolei Hadar. This is a simple Pashat Yid who can stand by his own son's Levaya. And he gets up and says, Echal Mishkan Tainis, Ani Mamin, this is it.
Unbelievable.
A person called me from Florida. I got a few other phone calls. And we're schmoozing with people. And people were inspired by seeing this, how he himself, it's easy to talk the talk, but this is somebody's own son's Levaya. Son's in front of him, and he can get up there and say, we trust the Eibishter. And he did this. He came home from Eretz Yisrael, he was by the Shiva, and this became a message that he was going to carry and develop.
When I spoke to Shlomi, we were talking about by the Shiva, the videos that went out of the Olam sitting around and singing Ani Mamin. It was surreal. It was hard to believe, and it was hard not to join in the emotion and crying of the moment, because everyone was swept up in that moment. It was really unbelievable.
Yeah. So Shlomi himself, as well known, he's been on a mission to make this, Ani Mamin, everyone's property, everyone's passion, and started at home base. So in Mesivta itself, after davening, people should say Ani Mamins. Interestingly, the Rambam himself has a strong aversion to institutionalizing saying Ani Mamins. He mentioned this in Chuvas. We're trying to speak about this. Some people know about this because of there's a question of halacha about standing by the reading of the Sefer Dibros. We try not to promote one part of Torah too much. People shouldn't get the wrong impression. But the Rambam himself, without the details, the Rambam himself strongly, again, he has this aversion to institutionalizing. A shul should not have an official reading, so to speak, together of Ani Mamin or Sefer Dibros or anything else, it would seem from the Rambam. But after davening, everyone to say it, that's fantastic. Everyone should take the time. And we end off Aleinu. The Mefarshim speak out. The reason why we end Aleinu, at the end of our davening, we put that at the end, is to end off with a message of Emunah. That's all it's all about. We walk out of shul, walk out into your life with Emunah. Shlomi started his home base in Mesivta. It's a family, it's a shul, that's where he is. And the Balbatim, the people there, were saying this every single day. And I had a conversation with some of the Balbatim there who I had grown to have more of a shaykhus with, more of a kasher with. And they were discussing how we have these Ani Mamins in Siddur. For the average person, you read it, you see the words, you know what most of them mean. Okay, so you open the Artscroll version, you get a full translation. Hopefully your English is up to Artscroll par, and you know what's going on. So, okay, but what do these ideas mean? And then you have questions. If you think about it, you have questions, and where are the answers? And the average person out there, where are you supposed to look? People aren't going to start looking up, and again, there was no easily accessible work. If you want to sit down and learn something in philosophy or something else, or the other works out there, it's fun, they're very intense. But if the average person out there who wants to spend a few minutes, and they're talking about how can we have this Ani Mamin taken to the next level, instead of just saying the words, at least one time sit down and figure it out. So we discussed the idea of having a shir, and the Balatim were extremely into this. Let's have a shir. We're discussing, let's make it short. Let's make it tangible. Let's make it one message each time. We're talking about 10 minutes, 8 minutes. Take one message, doesn't have to cover a full Ani Mamin each time. Take it step by step, one clear message each time, something explaining each of the animamins. So we started twice a week, 10 minutes, 8 minutes, 10
And
minutes.
you were giving the shir?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous chizik for me because I grew up in the yeshiva system more or less like many, many people out there. Everyone knows, everyone can tell you that, of course, Imam is so important, Yud Gimel Ikrim is so important. Many people say over, from Chaim, from Beis Brisk, there's a famous expression, the idea that if you don't know the Imamins, you're flawed in your Yiddishkeit. If you don't know the Imamins, there's something missing in your very essence of being a Jew. And then what? What are the Imamins? You stop these people and ask them, do you know what they are? And people can tell you some of them. We know it's so important. We talk about it, but what do they mean? So for me, I feel bad saying this, but myself, of course we know the basics, but how much thought have we given to the core of our emunah? And this is an opportunity for me to really sit down and get to work on this.
Were you doing a lot of preparation for it? Did it really become a whole undertaking?
It was hard, especially in the beginning, finding the right form for what I wanted to accomplish. I could find many in-depth things, but I wanted pshat. I wanted people to have the pshat of what was going on. What do I have to know? If I give you, let's say, talks about whatever topic it is, and I can give you many fine divrei Torah on it, and what Rishonim say and Achronim say, what do I have to know to fulfill that role? I have to know these 13 things. These are essential. These are essential for me as a yid to know. What exactly do I have to know, and what don't I have to know? Do I have to know all the details? Do I have to know the basics? So what's the idea that I have to know, the concept, and we pare it down? What exactly do I have to know? Job number 2, and this goes back to your original question about how to make it relevant. Once you have the message, can you put it into terms that people can understand? Without cheapening the message, without bringing it down, take that exact message and put it into people's terms. That means, for example, one thing I can say, I've taught in many, many scenarios, and I'm proud to say that in the use of mishalim, all sorts of parables to make things tangible, I've never used a mashal, to the best of my knowledge, I've never in my life used a mashal of a king and a princess. Talk to people today, the best, maybe a judge or a court, maybe, if a guy's been in court a few times. But you have to make it relevant. Put it into their terms. And there's so many things in our life. Look around. There are things that happen in our life every day. Take that and use that as a mashal, something they can understand. Take something they understand and attach it to the idea, and it works. And if you put it into their terms, the people get it, they grasp it, they can run with it. That's what it's all about. Baruch Hashem, we found tremendous atzlacha with the shurim. People took to it, very successful. People came, people wanted to hear more. Mesifta, this crowd within the shul started sending it out by email to other people. Today, because of the time there's a site, animamim.net, the shurim on the site, there are other shurim on the site from Rabbi Lapiansky, from others. It's developed, it's grown, and Baruch Hashem, there's a thirst. Klal Yisrael wants to hear, and Klal Yisrael wants to hear, I firmly believe, they want to hear real teichen. They want to hear real material.
Sure.
You tell someone a cute thing or something, a nice vart, which is cute, but it doesn't get to the core of the matter. People know what they're getting. If you get up and speak for an hour and you just say stories, people know they're not getting the real Torah. They're getting Torah, they're getting a nice, very enjoyable experience. But people want to hear the real deal. And when you tell them something that it says in Zohar or something esoteric, and it's real Torah, it's genuine, but it's not tangible for people, it's also not giving them something that can change their lives.
Right.
So you have to put it into a way that they can grab and they can change their own lives.
So at what point did you decide, okay, we're going to take the shir that seems to be growing in popularity and we're going to turn it into a written book?
So this, as so much in the world that happens, this is thanks very much to, in part, this Shirley Besser. Shirley is a man who loves making connections. He has a talent to make connections, and he saw the potential. He spoke to Rabbi Gedalia Zlotowitz, and I have to say, to me, everyone, you grow up with Artscroll. We talk in the early days when Artscroll first had the Megillah. Today, by and large, we all grew up with Artscroll, and it's sort of humbling, to call up, Rabbi Zlotowitz and on the phone, and all of a sudden, they're taking your work seriously. That's a big deal, Right. And Rabbi Zlotowitz, from day one, has been passionate. He calls me, we're on the phone, and he's behind it. It's going to come out. It's going to be phenomenal.
Did you have written samples at that point, or was it just an idea?
I had not written up any samples. Rabbi Zlotowitz asked me in the beginning of the process to see how to put it down into writing. I had written extensively in other forums, mostly in halacha matters, in a number of different publications. So I've done quite a bit of writing in the past. I've published other things in the past. So writing is not something foreign to me.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you're an Einokol grandson of the famed Rabbi Joseph Elias, who, in Artscroll lore is quite a name, having written a number of works, right? And his Haggadah is the go-to Haggadah. Is that something that you have in the Elias gene, the writing ability?
I would like to say I don't deserve any credit for my writing. I would like to think
I'm sure you've honed the skill, but
my father as well is carries on those genes. So I would like to think I would be humble to say this, but I would like to say that I would dream of one day doing that. I would also say that one of my grandfather's more monumental accomplishments with Artscroll was writing the commentary to the Shahnstein Perek Chelik, which
Really?
deals specifically with these topics. And I would tell you that it's something. It was a difficult heritage, a different feeling for me as I went through this all, because my grandfather having passed away a few years ago, having missed it by those few years, the opportunity. If I would have had, these were the topics that were up his alley, so to speak.
Right.
He had that proficiency and the fluency. Mentioning my grandfather in particular, I would just point out that as I went through this work and I'm writing this, a particular sensitivity I had, a feeling of loss. My grandfather, one of his monumental accomplishments was writing the commentary to the Artscroll Shahnstein edition, Perek Chelik, the Perek in Masechtas Sanhedrin, which deals with precisely these topics, Mashiach, Emunah, the basics. All those topics are covered in that Perek, and it's precisely there where he excelled in bringing that to Klal Yisrael. And as I went through these topics, you have the feeling like, I missed this by a few years. My grandfather passed away a few years ago, not that long ago, and if I would have had the opportunity to discuss these matters with him and go through them, it would have enriched my life, my understanding. I don't have that, but
if I may humbly say, what you've done is a magnificent work. I've no doubt that up above your grandfather shopping tremendous nachas. So perhaps we didn't benefit from his input, which would have been invaluable for such a work, but there's no question that with the beautiful product that we have, and this book that people are going to enjoy immensely and going to really take to make it a major part of their day, your grandfather's no doubt shopping nachas.
I hope so. I try to stay true to his mandate. But I think the vision, I think that he would like to see it brought out to the world, and I hope I'm playing some small part in fulfilling that.
Now, in learning Ani Maamin in depth, which you've done, I'm just curious, is there any part of Ani Maamin that really stood out to you, or that you said to yourself, wow, I always thought of it one way, and now you see it in a different light? And is there a particular Ani Maamin that more meaningful to you? What was the revelation or the epiphany that you had when you started really going in depth?
There were lessons every step of the way. And this may sound, but really every step of the way, when you clarify an idea and you say, wow, that's what the Rambam meant, and it makes so much more sense, and it clicks, and there's a real message here. I would say, the particular, as each person finds something insightful, Amir Hashem, as each reader goes through, the work, they'll find things according to their own life experience, what they took for granted, which may be true, not true, modifiable, or something along the lines. Hopefully everybody should feel enriched. There's one point which really became clarified as I went along this work, and that is, we talk about Emunah. What does it mean? The words Ani Maamin, I believe, everyone says, I believe. Emunah by itself just means I believe something. Pasiyam l'chadavar, a fool can believe anything. The words I believe by themselves don't really have any connotation. I can believe what I want to believe. What does that mean as a Yid? And one thing that we really get from the Rambam, and this is something I really felt as you go through the work, and it becomes more and more clear, and each of these ideas contribute to this, and that is, the Rambam wasn't writing random concepts. He wasn't writing random ideas. So I'm not going to refer to one specific idea, but the sum total of ideas was not about we have the ideas okay, I check off the box, I believe in Hashem, check, I'm done, that's it, we're good to go. The Rambam was addressing life as a Yid. I'm a Jew, I live in this world. What does that mean? Where am I going? What's my direction? He put together, there's the word Ani Maamin, that I believe in something, but what is that something? That something has 13 pieces. There's a puzzle here with 13 pieces, and you put them together, you have a full picture. That picture, I say, Ani Maamin, I believe in that. So the question really starts, we focus so much on Ani Maamin, I believe, but forget that a second. Before I get to Ani Maamin, let's take a step back. What am I believing in? What are we talking about? We're talking about a way to view your own life. It's a whole paradigm. It's a way to view everything differently. It's a way to view a mission in life, my goals in life. Why am I here? Where are my instructions? Where am I going? And then I say, well, that's a whole way to view life. I believe that this is what my life is about.
Right.
So it's not
just to add to your point, the Hamaynam, the masses, when you say Ani Maamin to them, it usually means one thing. It's Ani Maamin b'emunah shlema b'vias HaMashiach, because that's the most famous Ani Maamin.
Which is true, because people think of it as a sad thing, Ani Maamin, the cattle car is no way.
Right.
Klal Yisrael's Emunah has been brought out at times of tzara, which is true. I made mention there that we discussed, for example, Chazal tell us, daylight, when we see things clearly, crystal clear, that's when we talk about the chasadim of Hashem. When we see Hashem's hand, when something's clear to us, the times are good, a nace happens, a miraculous Yeshua, something fantastic, we could talk about Hashem. Emunah, this is discussed at length by the Mefarshim, make mention of this. Emunah, there are many sources, say, the Mefarshim tell us, Emunah means that there's a consistency where something is unwavering and will not change. The definition of emunah is it was that way and it will always be that way and it cannot change. With that said, emunascha b'leilos, when it gets dark for Klal Yisrael, that's when we say, I don't know what's going on. I can't tell you what's happening. But I know that yesterday he was here for me. The day before he was here for me. So when the lights are off and it's dark, I know he's still right there. So yes, it always comes out, the emunah comes out when suddenly I'm in a panic mode, I can't see, the lights are off, it's black. But I'm taking the ideas I already know, these 13 ideas, and carrying them forward. But it's not about necessarily the time of survival in the dark. So it comes to the fore when there's a bacher who was killed in Meron, when there's a tragedy, the horrors of World War II, and all these scenarios. That's when we see it. When someone can hold firm and say, I take that same message from before and I carry it straight through the time when I can't see what's happening.
Thanks to Abi Ranberg, people also know who Bariu Manig L'chal Abruim, I should mention. But like you're saying, really, Animamin in general is really a much broader context. It's the Animamin in the whole system that we believe in, and really each Animamin is just an outgrowth of that, right?
I'll take, for example, just a random one, just off the top of my head. Believing in the idea of consequences, that whatever we do has an effect, and we will ultimately enjoy the reward or pay the price. Right. That means when we go through life with accountability. That means everything I do, from when I wake up till I go to sleep, there's an accounting, there's a ledger, and it's all on the books. I'm being videoed, it's going to be there. So it's not a question of, oh, by the way, I believe. If I know that everything I do is on record, that means I better be very careful what I'm doing.
It's not by the way, it's so integral to who we are, what we do.
So that's what we're discussing.
And
the Rambam.
But people will ask you, the Animamins were instituted to be said, but really, how do you apply it tangibly?
One step back. The Rambam did not institute Animamins to be said. The Rambam put down the 13 ideas without writing the word Animamin at all. He said there are 13 basics for every Jew. Right. These are basics you have to know. This has nothing to do with saying it every day. The word Animamin doesn't appear. The one who wrote Animamin took those ideas and turned it into a credo. It's a statement of Animamin. I firmly, whatever it is, in these, however you translate it, I believe in these ideas. He took the Rambam's ideas and turned it into something we can say and profess our belief in that. The Rambam wasn't saying that. The Rambam just laid it out and said, here, these are the basics. Either you believe in it or you don't. It's a fact in the Rambam. If you believe it, you're a Jew, you're Jewish regardless. You're a full-fledged Jew regardless. But if you want to know if you're on the team and playing for the team, either you're in or you're out. All the dinim of achecha, of treating someone as a brother, the Rambam says, various different things that will come up. The Rambam says if you want to be on the team, so to speak, of Klal Yisrael, this is what it's at. Either you're on or you're off. Now it's up to you. The Animamin author went ahead and took that and said, okay, let's get up there and say clearly, Animamin, I believe in these things, I'm on board. I'm with Klal Yisrael. So he turned into something that you say, again, we don't know who he is, but he turned into something where I can get up and say, I'm with this.
What's your hope with this book? At the end of the day, besides that, obviously people should buy it and study it. What's your long-term goal that you feel would kind of validate the effort and the time to you? What would that be?
As I think anybody who has any involvement in chinuch, and I say chinuch in a broad sense, education, the greatest tzlach you could have in any job in chinuch, which is remarkably rewarding. It's remarkably rewarding. It's nothing as I can't describe anything close to the idea of you say a shir or you give over a thought or it's a 2-minute thought, and you see someone's face light up, like aha, I got it. There's something exhilarating about that you made a difference in someone's understanding of life, someone's understanding of a Gemara. And it resonated, and you can see in a moment. When you teach somebody, you can see right away either they got it or they didn't get it. Anyone in the field can tell you right away. But when you write something, you'll never see that. You'll never see that. But you hope that out there you're making a difference in people's lives. Now, I would say within that, I would take 2 notes within that, 2 small things I would say, and that is my immediate goal is that people view these ideas, this philosophy, these deep things. That's not for me. Today's day and age, maybe perhaps in Germany 200 years ago, people were passionate about us, at the time of Haskalah or other times, or whatever it was, people were passionate about their beliefs or ideas, and people would just go off the derech because, or the contrary, hopefully they would join Klal Yisrael because they were passionate about their beliefs, and it had to be. Today we're a generation of iPhones and sushi. That's what we do. And people view that. So,
but at the same time, there's a tremendous bikush, like you said before, a bikush emes. And I'll tell you something else. We're sitting in the world of Artscroll. What are the best-selling books? Living Amunah. Living Amunah. There's a desire for people to learn Amunah B'tachan. You have people like Reb Shalom Mordechai Rubashkin, who's selling a message, and he's the most popular message today. Wherever he goes, people flock to hear him. people want to hear messages of Amunah B'tachon. That's really what this book does. This book, it just encompasses it based on...
So the idea here is, what I'm trying to get to here, which is a little bit of a different track. When you notice, everyone has their track where they can nail their road to getting to Klal Yisrael and hitting what they have to hit. What I was trying to hear was that the depth of the ideas should be something which is not seen as being something aloof, something esoteric, something, for the people who, the really brainy people out there who like to learn philosophy for the fun of it, Every Yid in Klal Yisrael, the Rambam says, we all have to know this. And it means every Yid should and can understand this. This is not the domain of the philosophers. This is not the domain of the people who are tremendous Bali Machshava, people who spend, the people today, we are privileged to have tremendous Bali Machshava today, who know these things well. But every Yid in Klal Yisrael has to know this. So the first goal, I would say, just to go back to your question, the first goal is every Yid in Klal Yisrael should have a firm awareness. Again, we talk about Emunah, everyone says, Ani Mamin, that's great. I'm past that. I want every person to understand that the ideas that we have to believe are tangible, they're real and they're tangible. You can understand them, you go through this, or there's this Sefer, there's this work, you can do anything else you can find, find something to put into your terms that you should feel. It's not out there, it's right here. You can hang on to it, it's real. Number one, the very awareness that it's not something we just say, I believe, and close your eyes. The ideas of what we believe, those very 13 ideas are all things that you can grasp. You can know it, and know it well exactly what it means to be a Yid, and understand it. So the first accomplishment I would dream of accomplishing is to take these ideas and put them in people's hands that they can walk around saying, this is something I know, something I understand. I'm not talking about level, whatever it is, but on a simple, basic level. It's tangible and it's real to you. That's number one. Number two, and which is really the end goal, is that people should view their own lives differently. Emunah is not something to die with, it's something to live with. It's something to live every day of your life with. We walk around the world, and the world has a setup of how we view life. You're supposed to make money, you're supposed to be successful. We throw in those too, all good things to do, but this isn't dictates of life. You're supposed to be successful. You measure to some degree by having a job, and what is the purpose? That I should live a happy, well-meaning, well-intentioned life, and have good kids, Mitzvah Hashem, and all these type of good things, and I'm done. But if you do that, you can focus on the reality sort of dictated by the world at large, with our version of it, so to speak, with throwing in mitzvahs and everything else, and still not be in tuned to what your own mission is. There's a reality, and there's a different reality. There's a reality and something behind the scenes. I mean, just b'derech mashal. You look around this room. We have Sefarim, beautiful, ornate Sefarim shelves, full of all sorts of Sefarim. Let's say I turn around to these shelves, and I tell you, guess what? These Sefarim, they're not real. They don't exist. These Sefarim shanks, they ain't there. It looks a little strange. Right? Go over, check it out. Right? And yet, you look at me, as much as that could be true, I tell you there's another version out there. We're sitting in a room with no Sefarim shrines, and it's all your imagination. It's real, but in a different context. If I tell you that, you look at me a little strange. But yet, I'm telling you the same thing about our world. We look at the world and we say, you have to make money, you have to be successful. Hold on, there's something else happening. There's a different reality happening here, and we have to pay attention to it. There's a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and he put me here on a mission, and I have to do something. And I don't measure success the way the world measures success. What's my mission? The mission is he created the world. The mission is there's chayv einish. The mission is there's accountability. There's going to be an end game. There's going to be Mashiach. There's going to be a time that the world comes to perfection. There are things along the way. How do I know the mission? Where are my mission orders? So for that, Akash Baruch Hu gave me a Torah. These are all parts of my goal.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Because we're talking to an audience predominantly of adults, right? Most people watching Inside Artscroll are adults. They're grown, maybe married, maybe have children. These are such basic fundamentals that you would think that by the time someone is 10, 15, 20 years old and they've gone through the yeshiva system, they would understand these very fundamental concepts. Schar v'oinish, we live for a reason. We don't live to make money and live an easy life. We live to accomplish. Olam hazeh is doim le'proizdar, olam haba doim le'traklin. I mean, someone might say, if you don't have this down pat, but and on some basic level, by the time you're, whatever age, you're behind the eight ball. Like, what's going on? So,
and let's say we are.
So we have to. But I'm just saying,
That's
right?
Our goal. My goal at this point is.
I'm kind of lamenting, in a nice way, that people could go through a whole educational system and still not have this ingrained in them.
You don't want to get into shaky turf here, but
I'm not trying to say anything controversial.
I will
just
say,
saying,
I will
really,
say that,
right? Is that a valid point?
It's a valid point.
I understand that it's a lifetime work.
True, but the
to
basics,
really
should be
internalize
down
it, but
pat.
the
The basics
basics
should
we
be
should,
there that
right?
people should know. But I will say,
Yeah.
we have systems today, we have yeshivas today, they're doing a phenomenal job. Obviously, some are better, some excel, some do well, some others. We have dedicated rebbeim and mechanchim out there. I can't tell you every situation, whether every yeshiva puts priority on this, whether they don't. I don't know. I can't tell you that. I could tell you, from my own limited experience, that the maturity curve today is probably far behind what it was.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't live 50 years ago. I didn't live 200 years ago. Rabbi Yerucham and Amir used to discuss in these type of things at depth, in tremendous depth with the Bachram who came from Germany because they came with such a background. People used to grow up, again, going back, that this was part of their life. They grappled with these things. Why am I here in life? This is something they asked themselves. Today, I think most teenagers don't really have that question, but we're not hopeless. We're maybe behind the curve, but we're getting there. So at some point, it's going to happen. Now, if a yeshiva gave a shmooze in the 10th, 11th, 12th grade, Beis Medrash, and he didn't address it fully, or he couldn't because of the maturity level, it happens. But one thing's for sure. Whatever the situation is, however we got here, we have people out there who can use enrichment in these things. That I can tell you for sure.
Sure.
From my experience. So my job is...
And I'll add to you, sorry, I will add that someone like Reb Shlomi Steinmetz, to be able to get up after such an unspeakable tragedy, and get up by his son's Levaya and say Ani Mamin, for Klal Yisrael to watch a person go through an asylum like this and emerge with such strength, that speaks volumes. For someone else to go around and preach Emunah and preach Ani Mamin, so people, will maybe listen, maybe they won't. But when someone goes through something like that and still is able to stand up and say Ani Mamin b'Emunah Shlema, that's more powerful than anything else. That's why a book like this, to be dedicated by him, Lila Nishmas' son, and the amazing work that you've done in elucidating it, that combination is unmatched. And that's why I think, Amir Hashem, the Sefer, this book, is going to resonate with people on a different level. There's going to be a very special Siyata D'Shmai, Amir Hashem.
In terms of making it relevant, I would add that Baruch Hashem, I had the opportunity over the past 2 years to work at a number of opportunities of chinuch, but particularly one of them is at night. I teach quite frequently the past pretty much 4 years at Yeshiva Montreal, run by Artscroll's very own Rabbi Sherman's son-in-law, geared towards Bachrim who are post-high school. They're out of high school, they are working other scenarios, and they come to learn. These are a challenging crowd. They have questions, and our goal always has been, we come into Night Seder every night, and the boys all know. The first thing is, when you come to Night Seder, they're entitled to ask any question they want. Everything is on the table, whatever you want. The only thing that's off limits is people. You cannot ask a question about a person, but a question about any topic you want, which means that on my end, my job as a mechanech is to stop and think, these are people here, and they want answers. Whatever topic is, if I can't explain to them quickly, on the spot, in terms they can understand, I lost a chance. And if I lost a chance, I lost them. And then it all spirals. It's been a great experience the past couple of years. It's an opportunity that was gifted, and Baruch Hashem, from that, I think it developed really the ability, it helped develop that ability within this work to really plug into other people's brains and say, what bothers them? How do they think? And how can I put this into terms that they understand and something that will be meaningful for them, that they can grab and be tangible for them? If I understand it, it's great. But I have to take it from there and put it into their terms in their world and the people out there. And when you have a disparate crowd like that, which is challenging, wants answers, and they're not people who necessarily are of the yeshiva mentality, so you have to be able to take that idea and put it into that framework. I think it's something which is very beneficial and really played a role in putting this work on the table in a way that will be tangible for everyone out there.
Any final word that you want to say just as we close the conversation?
I think the work speaks for itself. I encourage everyone to read it. Hopefully it should enrich your life. But it's definitely true that, just to go back to what you just said, the greatest, we look to Gedolim as leaders, but sometimes the biggest role models we have are the people around us. We have people everywhere. Somebody in Shul knows how to daven, somebody knows how to learn. We watch them, we say, he's doing something special. The regular, simple Yidden around us can be the biggest role models if we pay attention to them. Mm-hmm. Someone like Shlomi, in an extreme situation. I remember years ago, I was living in Artscroll, and one of the people within the Kehillah, somebody flew to, his father was not well, he flew back to America, his father was nifter, he flew with the Arain back to Eretz Yisrael. And he came in right before Shabbos, and then came Shabbos. So he came into Shul on Shabbos, and he got an aliyah, and he benched Kaibel. And he said, thank you, Hashem, Shemglani Kol Tov. I remember sitting there watching. There's somebody who just went back. His father was not old, to the best of my knowledge. His father was nifter. He just went back to be with his father. His father was nifter. He's coming back in a state of tragedy. And he can stand by the bima and say, thank you, Baruch Hu, you do everything good for me. You always take care of me. It's something a Yid can do, and we do it all the time. pay attention to people around you who are doing this. And I'm talking not only about the Emunah and tragedy, but the way we live our lives. The people who live, the people all around us, in every shul in Klal Yisrael, you'll find somebody who lives his life with a passionate purpose in life. Let's be those people. They're there. Follow them, emulate them, live with a purpose. These Animaments are here to give you a guide of how you should live your life. It's not about just saying, I believe. It's not about just believing in Mashiach. It's great if we understand, if you ask the average Yid, why do we want Mashiach? What for? And hopefully, with this, he'll be able to answer. What's the goal in Olam Haba? What am I aiming for? Am I just aiming for a luxury vacation that I can't afford down here, so I should get it when I get upstairs? Hopefully, you have a more mature idea than just that. These are all ideas we should develop. But the sum total of all these ideas is to give a person a way to go through life, starting from today, when you pick it up and look through it, hopefully, I would hope, in the richest Klal Yisrael, to pick yourself up and to change the way you live into a better life, a motivated life, a passionate life of purpose. Just to have purpose in life, to know where you're going, what life's all about. It's our life. We're living it. Do it educated.
Mitzvah Hashem. Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.